Okay, today is the 5th of August 2010. Majjhima Nikāya Sutta 39, Maha Assapura Sutta, the greater discourse at Assapura. Thus I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living in the Angan country, at a town of the Angans named Assapura. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Venerable Sir," they replied. The Blessed One said, recluses, monks, that is how people perceive you. And when you are asked, what are you? You claim that you are recluses. Since that is what you are designated and what you claim to be, you should train thus. We will undertake and practice those things that make one a recluse, that make one a brahmana, so that our designations may be true and our claims genuine, and so that the services of those whose robes, alms, food, resting place, and medicinal requisites we use shall bring them great fruit and benefit, and so that our going forth shall not be in vain, but fruitful and fertile. Stop here for a moment. This word recluses is samana. Originally, the Brahmin caste in Pali is called Brahmana. They were supposed to be the ascetic class, the class of holy men who practice the holy path. And other people, when other people renounce, since they don't belong to the Brahmin caste, they are called samanas. So like our Buddha was called Samana Gautama. So this word, although it's translated here as recluses, it also means monk. And the Brahmana caste originally was supposed to be holy men, but later when they became advisors to the kings, they started to acquire property, wives, slaves and everything. So later they were known as Brahmins. So Brahmana is used in the sense here as a holy man. We will undertake and practice those things that make one a recluse, that make one a Brahmana. So here the Buddha says, you claim to be monks, you claim to be samanas, and you should live up to your name. You should undertake those practices that make you a recluse. And what monks are the things that make one a recluse, that make one a brahmana? Monks, you should train thus. We will be possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Hiri otapa. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. That much is enough, that much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that a monk should possess a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. These two qualities, the Buddha said in one sutta, protect the world. If people do not have a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, they can do almost anything. So for a monk, this is even more important, not to do those things that are shameful and do those wrongdoings that will drag one to the evil, the woeful plains of rebirth. What more is to be done? Monks, you should train thus. Our bodily conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified bodily conduct. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing, and our bodily conduct has been purified. That much is enough, that much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the reclusive status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, for there is more to be done. What more is to be done? Monks, we should train thus. Our verbal conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified verbal conduct. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct has been purified, and our verbal conduct has been purified. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the reclusive status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. What more is to be done? Monks, we should train thus. Our mental conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified mental conduct. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct and verbal conduct has been purified, and our mental conduct has been purified. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the reclusive status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. What more is to be done? Monks, we should train thus. Our livelihood shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified livelihood. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct and mental conduct have been purified, and our livelihood has been purified. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the reclusive status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. I'll stop here for a moment. So after the possessing a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, the Buddha here goes into sila, moral conduct. Moral conduct here is in terms of bodily conduct, verbal conduct, and mental conduct, plus livelihood. All these four things should be purified. Basically, body conduct is not to kill, steal, or commit adultery. And verbal conduct is not to lie, not to carry tales to cause quarrels and disharmony, not to speak coarse or foul language, and not to speak gossip. And mental conduct is to have right view, not wrong view. That means believing in karma vipaka, believing that there is planes of rebirth, there's a round of rebirths, and believing that there are holy men. And besides that, mental conduct also is not to be covetous, over greedy of others' things, and also not to have ill will, angry all the time. That is mental conduct. And livelihood is to earn livelihood, to sustain oneself in a way as not to harm others. But for a monk, it's a bit more. It's not to speak ill of another monk, speak ill of others, and not to talk about your attainments or hidden about your attainments, and not to belittle others. All this is right livelihood for a monk. In the Noble Eightfold Path, the Sila part consists of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech is the four precepts I just mentioned. Right action is not to kill, not to steal, not to commit adultery. And right livelihood is to get your livelihood in a way that does not harm others. What more is to be done? Monks, we should train thus. We will guard the doors of our sense faculties. On seeing a form with the eye, we will not grasp at its signs and features, since if we left the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade us. We will practice the way of its restraint. We will guard the eye faculty. We will undertake the restraint of the eye faculty. Similarly, on hearing a sound with the ear, smelling a odor with the nose, tasting a flavor with the tongue, touching a tangible with the body, cognizing a thought or mind object with the mind. We will not grasp its signs and features, since if we left the faculties unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade us. We will practice the way of their restraint. We will guard the faculties. We will undertake the restraint of the faculties. Monks, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct, mental conduct, and livelihood have been purified, and we guard the doors of our sense faculties. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. I stop here for a moment. So here, guarding the doors of the sense faculties is not to pay too much attention at the sense doors, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch, and thoughts. Because if we pay too much attention, then we start to notice those things that are attractive, attractive forms or sounds or smells, etc. And once we note that, then the tendency to crave for it will arise. So instead, in the practice of sati, we're supposed to put our attention on 4 objects of sati: the body, feelings, mind, and Dhamma. Dhamma means the Buddha's Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. So this guarding the sense faculties, not to pay too much attention at the 6 sense doors, worldly objects. So here it says, if we left the faculties unguarded, even evil and wholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade us. Covetousness arises when you are attracted by the sense object. You want to covet it, you want to possess it, whether it is forms or sounds or smells or taste and all that. And if you cannot get it, then grief will arise. So you have these 2 extremes. Either you covet something and you can't get it, you get grief. And what more is to be done? Monks, you should train thus. We will be moderate in eating, reflecting wisely. We will take food neither for amusement, nor for intoxication, nor for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness, but only for the endurance and continuance of this body, for ending discomfort, and for assisting the holy life. Considering, thus I shall terminate old feelings without arousing new feelings, and I shall be healthy and blameless, and shall live in comfort. Now monks, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct, mental conduct, and livelihood have been purified. We guard the doors of our sense faculties, and we are moderate in eating. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. Stop here for a moment. So here we come to moderation in eating. Pujanya matanyutta. This moderation in eating, we eat for the endurance and continuance of this body, and for assisting the holy life. Thinking, thus I shall terminate old feelings. This old feelings refers to the hungry feelings. If you eat to terminate the hungry feelings without arousing new feelings. New feelings are the feelings of greed. If you taste something good, the tendency to be greedy is aroused. So that's the meaning of terminating old feelings without arousing new feelings. What more is to be done? Monks, you should train thus. We will be devoted to wakefulness, Jagaryanu Yoga. During the day, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. In the first watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. In the middle watch of the night, We will lie down on the right side in the lion's pose with one foot overlapping the other, mindful and fully aware, after noting in our minds the time for rising. After rising in the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct, mental conduct and livelihood have been purified. We guard the doors of our sense faculties. We are moderate in eating and we are devoted to wakefulness. That much is enough and you may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. Stop here for a moment. So here, devotion to wakefulness among during the day, he walks back and forth and sits and purify the mind of obstructive states. That means a monk is supposed to practice meditation, either sitting or walking meditation throughout the day, so not to put your attention on the six sense objects, including thinking. If we talk and we also think, we also use our mind in the wrong way. So a monk is supposed to only practice meditation throughout the day. The first watch of the night refers to night is the night is from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. and that is broken into 3 watches of 4 hours each. The first watch is from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. The middle watch or second watch is from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. and then the third is from 2 until 6 a.m. So in the middle watch, monk is supposed to take his rest from 10 until 2. In Malaysian time, it would probably be from 11 until 3, because our time is faster by 1 hour compared to Thailand. So in the middle watch, it says here, lie down also, you're supposed to practice. Here it says mindful and fully aware. Actually, the Pali word is sati sampajanya. You still practice sati sampajanya. Sati is recollecting your meditation object. Now, for example, if you are doing the 32 parts of the body, even you lie down to sleep also, you're supposed to keep awake by chanting the 32 parts of the body. And fully aware means maintain your wakefulness, which is hard to do for a normal mind, which is not strong enough. It's very difficult to maintain your wakefulness throughout the night and the day. So that is the Buddha standard. So here, Buddha standard, you see, is only resting for 4 hours in a day, and also to be aware during those 4 hours. And also you note the time 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. Now medical research says that is the time our body and our organs shut off. Our organs tend to shut off. That's the time to take a rest. So there are some people like drug addicts, they stay awake throughout the night. They are stressing the body. And that is not the right time to stay awake. That's the right time to take a rest during the middle watch. So you see, a monk is supposed to strive to maintain this meditation, this wakefulness throughout the day and throughout the night. What more is to be done? Monks should train thus. We will be possessed of recollection and full awareness. We will act in full awareness when going forward and returning. We will act in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away. We will act in full awareness when flexing and extending our limbs. We will act in full awareness when wearing our robes and carrying our outer bowl and robe. We will act in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting. We will act in full awareness when defecating and urinating. We will act in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking and keeping silent. Now monks, you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct, mental conduct and livelihood have been purified. We guard the doors of our sense faculties. We are moderate in eating. We are devoted to wakefulness. And we are possessed of mindfulness and full awareness. That much is enough. That much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do. And may rest content with that much. Monks, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the reclusive status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. Let's stop here for a moment. So here, although the translation is mindfulness and full awareness, actually sati sampajanya, recollection and full awareness or mindfulness. Whatever we do, we are fully aware. And also, although here it doesn't say so, you're also supposed to maintain your recollection of your meditation object. What more is to be done? Here monks, a monk resorts to a secluded resting place, the forest, the root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. I'll stop here for a moment. So we see here, seclusion for a monk is very important. It's part of the monk's practice. Here, what is listed here in this sutta is all practice of a monk, charana, or conduct of a monk. When you compare this with the earlier list we saw, we find here we have this moderation in eating, which was not in the earlier sutta we read, and also devotion to wakefulness. But that was something I mentioned the other day. So it is a combination of these suttas. We collect all these factors of charana, conduct. So that's how we came up with 10 factors. Where somebody like Lady Sayadaw, I think he collected only based on 1 or 2 suttas, he came up with only 7 or 8 factors. So, on returning from his alms round after his meal, he sits down, folding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness before him. Abandoning covetousness for the world, he abides with the mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Abandoning ill will and hatred, he abides with the mind free from ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Abandoning sloth and torpor, he abides free from sloth and torpor, percipient of light, mindful and fully aware. He purifies his mind from sloth and torpor. Abandoning restlessness and remorse, he abides unagitated, with the mind inwardly peaceful. He purifies his mind from restlessness and remorse. Abandoning doubt, he abides having gone beyond doubt. Unperplexed about wholesome states, he purifies his mind from doubt. Stop here for a moment. So here is a description of the abandonment of the hindrances. As I mentioned before, when you look abandoning sloth and torpor, he abides free from sloth and torpor, percipient of light. So light wells up from within him when he abandons sloth and torpor. Monks, suppose a man were to take a loan and undertake business, and his business were to succeed so that he could repay all the money of the old loan, and there would remain enough extra to maintain a wife. Then, on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were afflicted, suffering and gravely ill, and his food would not agree with him, and his body had no strength. But later he would recover from the affliction, and his food would agree with him, and his body would regain strength. Then, on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were imprisoned in a prison house, but later he would be released from prison, safe and secure. with no loss to his property, then on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were a slave, not self-dependent, but dependent on others, unable to go where he wants. But later on, he will be released from slavery, self-dependent, independent of others, a free man, able to go where he wants. Then on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man with wealth and property were to enter a road across a desert, but later on he would cross over the desert, safe and secure, with no loss to his property. Then on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. So too monks, when these 5 hindrances are unabandoned in himself, a monk sees them respectively as a debt, a disease, a prison house, slavery, and a road across a desert. But when these 5 hindrances have been abandoned in himself, he sees that as freedom from debt, healthiness, release from prison, freedom from slavery, and a land of safety. I'll stop here for a moment. So from this description of abandoning the hindrances, the similes given here are quite clear that the abandonment of the hindrances are permanent. It's not like what some people say, that you only abandon the hindrances when you are in jhana. But when you come out of jhana, they come back. But here you see the description is like is free from debt. Free from debt means he's permanently free from debt. It's not just for 5 minutes. He's free from debt. He's healthy, no more sick. He's released from prison. He's released from slavery. He's crossed to the land of safety. All this indicates that this abandonment of the hindrances are quite permanent. Although, of course, you could say that if a person is free from debt, later he can still get into debt. Or he's released from prison, later he can be still put into prison. That's not likely. Having abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, he enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. He makes the rapture and pleasure born of seclusion drench, steep, fill and pervade his body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Just as a skilled bathman or a bathman's apprentice heaps bath powder in a metal basin and sprinkling it gradually with water, kneads it until the moisture wets his ball of bath powder, soaks it, and pervades it inside and out, yet the ball itself does not ooze. So too, a monk makes the delight and pleasure born of seclusion drench, steep, fill and pervade his body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Stop here for a moment. Here this description is quite important and quite instructive for a monk in practicing meditation, because here he says after a monk attains the first jhana, he's supposed to make that delight and pleasure fill his whole body. Fill his whole body. In other words, he's aware of his body. Whereas initially when the monk meditates, as he gets into his mind, he might not be aware of the body. But in this case, after he attains the first jhana, this is the Buddha's instruction, is to make him pervade the body with delight and pleasure. So he has to become aware of his body and pervade it. So this is one thing. Actually, it is only in the arupas or arupa jhana that the 5 senses close. Not in rupa jhana. Again, monks, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a monk enters upon and abides in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind, without applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of concentration. He makes the delight and pleasure born of concentration drench, steep, fill and pervade his body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the delight and pleasure born of concentration. Just as though there were a lake whose waters welled up from below, and it had no inflow from east, west, north or south, and would not be replenished from time to time by showers of rain. Then the cool fount of water welling up in the lake would make the cool water drench, steep, fill and pervade the lake, so that there is no part of the whole lake unpervaded by cool water. So too a monk makes the delight and pleasure born of concentration drench, steep, fill and pervade his body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the delight and pleasure born of concentration. Stop here for a moment. So here again, this simile shows that the monk is supposed to use his will so that this piti and sukha will pervade the body. In the first jhana, he has to make more effort, just like the man has got to knead the ball of soap, bath powder, knead with his hand and make it pervade, the moisture pervade the bath powder. So in the same way, this monk has to make more effort in the first jhana. But in the second jhana, although he still uses his will, but it would seem from the simile that it is easier, because just like the water, the cool water rises up from the bottom, wells up from below. So in the same way, his delight and pleasure wells up from below him and pervade the body. But still you notice that he has to use the will. This is a strong contrast to the Visuddhimagga description of jhana. In the Visuddhimagga description of jhana, seems like you are not in control of your, you cannot think at all, and you cannot use your will also. So you have to be very careful. Sometimes if you don't investigate the suttas enough, you don't see the contradiction between the suttas and later books like the Visuddhimagga. Again, monks, with the fading away as well of delight, a monk abides in equanimity, mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body. He enters upon and abides in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones, Aryans, announce, he has a pleasant abiding who has equanimity and is mindful. He makes the pleasure divested of delight, drench, steep, fill and pervade this body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the pleasure divested of delight. Just as in a pond of blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses that are born and grow in the water thrive immersed in the water without rising out of it, and cool water drenches, steeps, fills and pervades them to their tips and their roots, so that there is no part of all those lotuses unpervaded by cool water. So too a monk makes the pleasure divested of delight drench, steep, fill and pervade this body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the pleasure divested of delight. Again, monks, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a monk enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness, or complete purity of recollection and equanimity, complete purity of sati and upekkha, recollection and equanimity. He sits pervading this body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the pure, bright mind. Just as though a man was sitting covered from the head down with a white cloth, so that there would be no part of his whole body unpervaded by the white cloth, so too a monk sits pervading this body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by the pure, bright mind. Stop here for a moment. So you see, initially, when a monk attains the elimination of sloth and torpor, he's percipient of light. This sloth and torpor is a darkness in the mind. So when he gets rid of the darkness, this sloth and torpor, this light arises. But in the fourth jhana, this light is so strong that it pervades the whole body. His whole body is bright. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. Stop here for a moment. So you see here, this description of the mind as being purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, refers to the fourth jhana. Only when a person attains the fourth jhana, that the mind becomes so purified, bright, and wieldy. That means can be used, malleable, can be used in whatever direction the meditator wants. So here he directs that mind to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. And he recollects his manifold past lives, that is 1 birth, 2 births, 3, etc., thousands and aeons of world cycles. Thus with the aspects and particulars he recollects his manifold past life. Just as a man might go from his own village to another village, and then back again to his own village. He might think, I went from my own village to that village, and there I stood in such a way, sat in such a way, spoke in such a way, kept silent in such a way. And from that village I went to another village, and there I stood in such a way, sat in such a way, spoke in such a way, kept silent in such a way. And then from that village I came back again to my own village. So too, a monk recollects his manifold past lives. Thus with the aspects and particulars he recollects his manifold past lives. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. Thus with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and he understands how beings pass on according to their actions. Just as though there were 2 houses with doors, and a man with good sight standing there between them saw people entering the houses and coming out and passing to and fro. So too with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, amongst these beings passing away and reappearing, and he understands how beings pass on according to their actions or karma. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. He understands as it actually is. This is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. These are taints, this is the origin of the taints, this is the cessation of the taints, this is the way leading to the cessation of the taints. When he knows and sees thus, his mind is liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of being, and from the taint of ignorance. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. Just as if there were a lake in a mountain recess, clear, limpid, and undisturbed, so that a man with good sight, standing on the bank, could see shells, gravels, and pebbles, and also shoals of fish swimming about and resting. He might think, there is this lake, clear, limpid, and undisturbed, and there are these shells, gravels, and pebbles, and also these shoals of fish swimming about and resting. So too a monk understands that this actually is his suffering, is the origin of suffering, etc. He understands birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being. Monks, a monk such as this is called a recluse, a brahmana, a holy man, one who has been washed, one who has attained to knowledge, a holy scholar, a noble one, an arahant. Stop here for a moment. Here, a monk has finished his work. He is really a samana, a recluse, a brahmana, holy man, one who has been washed. In the Indian tradition, when a disciple finishes the training, then he he undergoes a ceremonial bath. So he's bathed. That's why here it says one who has been washed. That means he has completed his training of the holy life. One is attained to knowledge. A holy scholar. Holy scholar is one who has the holy knowledge. The holy knowledges. A noble one, an arahant. And how is a monk a recluse? He has quieted down evil, unwholesome states that defile, bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. That is how a monk is a recluse. And how is a monk a brahmana? He has expelled evil, unwholesome states that defile, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. That is how a monk is a brahmana. And how is a monk one who has been washed? He has washed off evil, unwholesome states that defile, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. That is how a monk is one who has been washed. And how is a monk one who has attained to knowledge? He has known evil, unwholesome states that defile, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. That is how a monk is one who has attained to knowledge. And how is a monk a holy scholar? The evil, unwholesome states that defile, and lead to future birth, aging, and death have been streamed away from him. That is how a monk is a holy scholar. And how is a monk a noble one? Evil, unwholesome states that defile and lead to future birth, aging, and death are far away from him. That is how a monk is a noble one. And how is a monk an arahant? Evil, unwholesome states that defile, bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death are far away from him. That is how a monk is an arahant. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. This is the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha is giving the steps a monk should take so that he is truly a samana, truly a brahmana. He starts with having a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Then he purifies his these three conducts: body, verbal, and mental conduct, and livelihood. And then he guards his sense faculties, moderate in eating, devoted to wakefulness, possessed of recollection and full awareness. And then he goes to a secluded place and meditates, and there he abandons the hindrances and attains the 4 jhanas. And after attaining the 4 jhanas, when the mind is purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, then he directs it to the various knowledges and becomes enlightened and completes all the practice of the monk. And is truly a monk, an arahant. The next sutta, number 40, Cula Assapura Sutta, the shorter discourse at Assapura. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Angan country at a town of the Angans named Assapura. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Monks, noble sir, they replied. The Blessed One said, Recluses, monks, that is how people perceive you. And when you are asked, what are you? You claim that you are recluses. Since that is what you are designated and what you claim to be, you should train thus. We will practice the way proper to the recluse, so that our designations may be true and our claims genuine, and so that the services of those whose robes, alms, food, resting place, and medicinal requisites we use shall bring them great fruit and benefit, and so that our going forth shall not be in vain, but fruitful and fertile. How, monks, does a monk not practice the way proper to the recluse? For so long as a monk who is covetous has not abandoned covetousness, who has a mind of ill will and has not abandoned ill will, who is angry has not abandoned anger, who is revengeful has not abandoned revenge, who is contemptuous has not abandoned contempt, who is domineering has not abandoned his domineering attitude, who is envious has not abandoned envy, who is avaricious has not abandoned avarice, who is fraudulent has not abandoned fraud, who is deceitful has not abandoned deceit, who has evil wishes has not abandoned evil wishes, who has wrong view has not abandoned wrong view. For so long he does not practice the way proper to the recluse, I say. Because of his failure to abandon these stains of the recluse, these faults of the recluse, these drags for the recluse, which are grounds for rebirth in a state of deprivation, and whose results are to be experienced in an unhappy destination. Suppose the weapon called a Mahathera, well whetted on both edges, were enclosed and encased in a patchwork sheath. I say that such a monk's going forth is comparable to that. I stop here for a moment. But here the Buddha is saying, if a monk possesses all these stains, covetous, has ill will, anger, revenge, contempt, domineering attitude, envy, avarice, fraud, deceit, evil wishes and wrong view, then it is like this Mahathera is like our parang, machete. So if this weapon, which is sharp on both edges, is enclosed in a patchwork sheath. Patchwork sheath, I guess, is like a piece of cloth. If such a sharp weapon, you enclose it with this like cotton cloth, then you will easily cut that patchwork sheath, that cloth. So the simile means that these unwholesome stains of a monk will just cut away the monkhood of the holy life. So if he cuts away his monkhood, then he is not really a monk, although he wears the robe. I do not say that the recluse's status comes about in a patchwork cloak wearer through the mere wearing of the patchwork cloak, nor in a naked ascetic through mere nakedness, nor in a dweller in dust and dirt through mere dust and dirt, nor in a washer in water through mere washing in water, nor in a tree root dweller through mere dwelling at the root of a tree, nor in an open air dweller through mere dwelling in the open air, nor in a practitioner of continuous standing through mere continuous standing, nor in a taker of food at stated intervals through mere taking of food at stated intervals, nor in a reciter of incantations through mere recitation of incantations, nor do I say that the recluse's status comes about in a matted hair ascetic through mere wearing of the hair matted. Monks, if through the mere wearing of the patchwork cloak, a patchwork cloak wearer who was covetous, abandoned covetousness, who had a mind of ill will, abandoned ill will, who had wrong view, abandoned wrong view, etc., then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, would make him a patchwork cloak wearer as soon as he was born, and have him undertake the patchwork cloak wearing thus. Come, my dear, be a patchwork cloak wearer, so that as a patchwork cloak wearer, when you are covetous, you will abandon covetousness. When you have a mind of ill will, you will abandon ill will, etc. But I see here a patchwork cloak wearer who is covetous, who has a mind of ill will, who has wrong view, etc. And that is why I do not say that the recluse's status comes about in a patchwork cloak wearer through the mere wearing of the patchwork cloak. If through nakedness, a naked ascetic who was covetous abandoned covetousness, if through mere dust and dirt, through mere washing in water, mere dwelling at the root of a tree, etc., in the same way, if through all these things he abandoned all these unwholesome states, then from young they would have made him do all these things. But Buddha says it is not through this that he abandons all these evil states. How monks does a monk practice the way proper to the recluse? When any monk who was covetous has abandoned covetousness, who had a mind of ill will, had abandoned ill will, who was angry, had abandoned anger, who was revengeful, had abandoned revenge, who was contemptuous, had abandoned contempt, who was domineering, had abandoned his domineering attitude, who was envious, had abandoned envy, who was avaricious, had abandoned avarice, who was fraudulent, has abandoned fraud, who was deceitful, has abandoned deceit, who has evil wishes, had abandoned evil wishes, who had wrong view, had abandoned wrong view. Then he practices the way proper to the recluse, I say, Because of his abandoning these stains for the recluse, these faults for the recluse, these dregs for the recluse, which are grounds for rebirth in a state of deprivation, and whose results are to be experienced in an unhappy destination. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if a monk abandons these unwholesome states, these stains of the holy life, then he is practicing the proper way of a recluse, just by abandoning these unwholesome states, because these unwholesome states lead to rebirth in a woeful plane of existence. You all have heard me mention before about one of our devotees who had an auntie whose anger was very great, who had a very nasty temper, and his character was very bad, so that he had all these unwholesome states. So 2 days before he died, the two Cula teeth came out, and after he died, then the 2 teeth vanished when she left the body. So it is because of this, because of these unwholesome states, that all these evil conditions appear. He sees himself purified of all these evil unwholesome states. He sees himself liberated from them. When he sees this, gladness is born in him. When he is glad, delight is born in him. In one who is delighted, the body becomes tranquil. One whose body is tranquil feels pleasure. In one who feels pleasure, the mind becomes concentrated. He abides pervading 1/4 with the mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he abides pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. He abides pervading 1/4 with the mind imbued with compassion. Similarly, abides pervading with the mind imbued with joy, with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Stop here for a moment. So, this last part, I see that when a monk purifies himself of the unwholesome states, then gladness is born in him. When we progress in the spiritual path, and we get rid of our unwholesome states, and we cultivate wholesome states, then as we progress, we are glad, and from gladness, delight is born. From delight, the body becomes tranquil, and then he feels pleasure or happy, and from there the mind becomes concentrated. Unhappy mind can never become concentrated. So when we practice the holy path, we have to become happy. You see some people, they meditate, they're supposed to see suffering, and they become, they themselves have a lot of suffering. So they have a lot of suffering, and the mind cannot become concentrated. Whereas in some other sutta, it is mentioned that somebody praised the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples. He said, compared to the external ascetics, the Buddha's disciples always look very happy, very delighted. So that is the condition to attain concentration. We must be happy. Then after the mind becomes concentrated, here the monk practices the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, metta, and then karuna is compassion, and then mudita is joy, and upekkha is equanimity. So after he has attained a strong mind, then only he can radiate these Brahma Viharas, these divine abidings. Suppose there were a pond with clear, agreeable, cool water, transparent, with smooth banks, delightful. If a man, scorched and exhausted by hot weather, weary, parched and thirsty, came from the east, or from the west, or from the north, or from the south, or from where you will, having come upon the pond, he would quench his thirst and his hot weather fever. So too, monks, if anyone from a clan of nobles goes forth from the home life into homelessness, and after encountering the Dhammavuddho proclaimed by the Tathagata, develops loving kindness, compassion, joy and equanimity, and thereby gains internal peace, then because of that internal peace, he practices the way proper to the recluse, I say. And if anyone from the clan of Brahmins goes forth, from the clan of merchants, from a clan of workers goes forth, and after encountering the Dhammavuddho proclaimed by the Tathagata, develops loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy and equanimity, and thereby gains internal peace, then because of that internal peace, he practices the way proper to the recluse, I say. Monks, if anyone from the clan of nobles goes forth from the home life into homelessness, and by realizing for himself with direct knowledge here and now, enters upon and abides in the deliverance by mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints, then he is already a recluse because of the destruction of the taints. And if anyone from the clan of Brahmins or merchants or workers goes forth from the home life into homelessness, and by realizing for himself with direct knowledge here and now, enters upon and abides in the deliverance by mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints, then he is already a recluse because of the destruction of the taints. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, monk, if he practices properly, he should abandon all these unwholesome states like covetousness, ill will, anger, revenge, contempt, domineering attitude, envy, avarice, fraud, deceit, evil wishes, wrong view, etc. So when he abandons these, then he's truly a recluse. Then after that, after he's abandoned these states, then he's happy. And from happiness, his mind becomes concentrated when he practices meditation, and then he can attain the divine abidings, the 4 divine abidings. Then the Buddha says, from there he can also attain liberation and become an arahant. Then he is truly a recluse. I think for tonight that's all we have time for. Anything to discuss?
For Dhammavuddho, some books say that by the 4 Dhammavuddho alone, one cannot attain liberation, if I'm not mistaken. Because some say that the Master completely
this statement that the Brahma Viharas can lead you only to the 3rd or 4th jhana comes from the Visuddhi Magga. In the suttas, these Brahma Viharas can bring you to the Arupas, Arupa jhanas. But by themselves, I don't think you can attain enlightenment. You need the knowledge of the Dhamma. When you contemplate the Dhamma, that is Sati. Sati means contemplation of the 4 objects of Sati, body, feelings, mind and Dhamma. And out of these 4 objects, the most important is Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. Because in one sutta, the Buddha says there are 5 occasions for liberation. Only 5 times a monk becomes liberated, or monks becomes liberated only in 5 ways. One, when he is listening to the Dhamma. Secondly, when he is teaching the Dhamma. Thirdly, when he is repeating the Dhamma. Fourthly, when he is reflecting on the Dhamma. And only the 5th during meditation. So you see, out of these 5 occasions, 4 of them have to do with the Dhamma. So you don't, generally you don't become enlightened just by contemplating your feelings or your thoughts. But it is actually the Dhamma. Even if you if you contemplate your feelings and your thoughts, but you see Dhamma there, then only you become enlightened. In other words, the foundation of Dhamma, the foundation of the Buddha's suttas are extremely important. For example, the other day I was telling Mechi Fun about this Bhattacharya, the lady nun. She became a nun after her 2 children died, her 2 sons died, the husband died. And then when she went home, she found that the brother also died, the parents also died. So, because all this happened in such a short time, she was so grief-stricken, she became mad. And she was walking around, muttering the names of these dead relatives. And because she was not aware of her condition, of herself, of her body, her clothes fell off and she was naked, so she didn't know. So then one day she came to the Buddha, and the Buddha healed her, and then after that she became a nun. And then after she became a nun, she practiced many years, attained the jhanas and all that, and learned the Dhamma. Then one day when she came back from Pindapata, arms round, she washed her feet. When we go on arms round, we come back, our feet are dirty. Before you enter the kuti or the hall or whatever, you have to wash your feet. So she took some water and splashed on her feet. She saw the water running a little distance and sank into the ground. And then something struck her. And then she took some more water and splashed on her feet again and saw the water go a bit further and go sink into the ground. The third time she did, the water went further and sank into the ground. Then she saw, just like her own relatives, there are some people in life, they come a short distance in life and they die, just like her children. And some people go a little bit longer way and die in the middle age. And some people go a longer distance and die in their old age. And then from this she saw suffering, and because of all the Dhamma she had learned and because of her mind being so clear, she just reflected on this and became an Arahant. So this liberation, attaining all this, is not, you cannot like sit down and think you want to reflect and contemplate on these 4 objects of sati, contemplate on your body, and contemplate on your feelings and your mind and the Dhamma, and you think you can become Arya or something. It's not like that. When you do all the groundwork, and then a creation arises, just like this, when she didn't expect, then she became enlightened. So the groundwork is very important. Just like in the sutta we heard, the reason why the chicks are not hatched from the eggs is because the mother hen didn't sit long enough. And the mother hen sits long enough, she doesn't have to make a wish, make my chicks hatch from the eggs. She doesn't have to make a wish at all, and the chicks will hatch when she has sat long enough. So in the same way, we have to do the work of cleaning the mind of the 5 hindrances by meditating and attaining the jhanas. And at the same time, we study the suttas to understand the Dhamma better. So when the right occasion arises, sometimes you listen to the Dhamma, it just strikes you. A particular Dhamma you hear is just apt for your situation, like this Bhattacharya, and you become enlightened.
Thank you, Bhante. The next question, Bhante, is the training of the senses. So this training of the senses, we must have very solid Dhamma base in order to really see clearly. Because let's say we hear something unpleasant. So the mind door is open and we start, if it is something you don't like, then you start to proliferate. The mind starts to proliferate. If you don't, if we are not guarding the sense, one of the sense, then it will be another sense door opening.
Yes, absolutely. Earlier we read the sutta about development of body and development of mind, and the Buddha gave the simile of the piece of wood, which is sappy, wet inside and also wet outside, and then another one which is wet inside but dry outside, and the third one is dry inside and dry outside. Only the third one you can make a fire with. The other two, because they are either wet inside or outside or both, then you cannot make a fire. So in the same way, when a person understands the Dhamma and understands the Dhamma very well, that means you have to study, take a lot of effort to study, then you know the consequences of evil and wholesome states. When you know very well the consequences of evil and wholesome states, then you bodily you refrain from, for example, engaging in sensual pleasures, having sensual desires, bodily and mentally withdrawn also. If any thought of sensual desire arises in the mind, because you understand that it is unwholesome, immediately you stop it, you abandon it. You can even do that even before you attain the jhanas, if you understand the Dhamma properly. But after a person attains the jhanas, especially the fourth jhana, then even the tendency, the insight is rooted out. In that case, he's like the third type of wood, outside dry and inside also dry. Whereas a normal person, if he has not attained the four jhanas, he may understand the Dhamma well, but because the tendency has not been rooted out from him, he may also, at a moment of weakness, he might also succumb to this sensual desire. That's why there are some monks who practice meditation for many years, especially monks who practice vipassana meditation. They see very clearly, they understand very clearly, but because the mind is not strong enough, many of them disrobe because of this sensual desire. They fall prey to a woman. Many of them are caught by a woman. I know a monk after 40 years in robes also, practicing vipassana and teaching vipassana, also disrobed because of a woman. I know an old monk also, 70 years old, teaching vipassana, also disrobed because of a woman. So, in theory, it's all very good. You see very clearly, you're mindful, you know, you understand. But the tendency inside is not, just like the Buddha says, the piece of wood inside is still wet. Outside it may be dry, but it won't start a fire.
So, Bhante, in this case, whenever, let's say, you have intention of a sense object or whatever from outside, you have to start concentrating on the Dhamma in order to guard our senses, because it's not easy to cut away immediately. So, really, I would think that most of the time we argue with each other, let go, why should I let go, and then start going back to the Dhamma and teaching ourselves mentally.
If the mind is not strong, it's very hard to maintain the mindfulness. In a moment of weakness, the mindfulness is lost. In theory, yes, but in practice. So you need a strong mind, otherwise it's very difficult.
On page 38 here, we say the introduction.
Which
Here
page?
I don't understand on this paragraph. Is the methods of meditation taught by the Buddha in the Pali Canon or in two broad systems?
What page?
One of the development.
What page?
Page 38. Okay.
Yeah.
See, one of the development, serenity, samatha, is aimed at concentration, samadhi. The other is the development of insight, vipassana, which aims at understanding or wisdom. In the Buddha system of mental training, the role of the serenity is subordinated to that of insight, because the latter is a crucial instrument needed to uproot the evil at the bottom of the samsaric bondage.
You can see from the suttas, this is definitely wrong. This is the view of Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who is a monk, who believes in the Abhidhamma, who believes in the commentary. But that is not what the Buddha says. No, this is his opinion. Yeah. Remember, I always quote the Digha Nikāya Sutta number 29, Pasadika Sutta, where the Buddha said that if any person thinks that the Buddha's teaching is not complete, that he needs to refer to the Abhidhamma or the commentary, then the Buddha says he does not understand the Dhamma.
Bhante, I just a bit curious about something like that. Probably when you attain enlightenment, probably we don't say out. But just wondering, like the nun who attained the enlightenment by pouring the water, actually what he actually say out to people, like how did he attain that? So this is the meaning, like the meaning is like she shouldn't say she enlightened, right?
No, normally the monks and the nuns during the Buddha's time, when they are enlightened, they will go and tell the Buddha, but they don't say, I have become enlightened. They say generally, say like the Buddha has been venerated. They have paid veneration to the Buddha. So they hint that they have finished their work, that they can do. They cannot directly say that they.
Monks' conduct seems to be quite stringent. Maybe like angelic, the fear of pain and shame and all that for tapa. They seem to be doing very slight wrong and very shaky and go down to metaphysics. So lay people can do a lot more, but the most they come back as a poor man or needy or ugly person. But a monk to do wrong things, maybe like conduct and behavior is poor, to go to unhappy state, isn't that very stringent?
Not actually, because this hiri ottappa, having a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, is equally applicable to lay people. The Buddha said in the suttas that if lay people did not have this hiri ottappa, sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, then they will be engaging in incest. Mother and son will make love, uncle and nephew will make love and all these things, and they will be behaving like animals. The Buddha said, animals, they don't have these two things, sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. So the Buddha says, it is these two things that protect the world. If these two things were not around, then people would behave like animals. That was the cause of the downfall of the great Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, they were so strong, so powerful, they were so rich, that they engaged in all this kind of thing, no sense of shame. So that's why the empire collapsed. Not only for monks, equally applicable for lay people. You don't have these two, you will also go to hell. Lay people will also go to hell, to the woeful plains of rebirth. Not necessarily monks, but for monks, because monks wear the robe, and are supposed to be holy, to behave properly. So if among cheats, then the offense is greater, because the monk is supposed to set the standard. You kind of promise when a monk takes the precepts, when a monk ordains, he promises to uphold these precepts. If he cannot uphold these precepts, or at least a reasonable standard, we don't expect the monk to be like an arahant, but at least a sense of decency must be there. If not, then woeful pains will be waiting for him. Okay, shall we stop here?